I want to ask you about the context in which this film was made. You told me when you suggested we show this one that one thing that excited you about the subject matter of this film is it has all kinds of echoes today with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I was noticing in the credits there, you've got people like Ernest Dickerson working for you. Maddie Rich is in the credits. Both of those are filmmakers, African American filmmakers who were kind of coming out around that time.
Darnell Martin also.
That's right.
Assistant camera person.
And when we did our podcast interview, I played a clip from your Oscar acceptance speech around this time for Silence of the Lambs, and you took time in your Oscar acceptance speech to acknowledge this new wave of directors. You call out Ernest Dickerson and Maddie Rich and Jodie Foster by name as new directors who were bringing new vitality to cinema, new voices to cinema. It felt like that was a kind of moment that then kind of sort of quickly disappeared. Now here, 25 years later, we're still talking about lack of opportunity and inclusion in voices. So at that time, what was on your mind about these issues of race in New York City?
Well, I guess it's just, at that point in my life, I'd gotten, very conscious of what was going on. And, even though it was a lot of fun to get my Oscar, but no confusion about that, still I realized that I was just, here comes another white male getting this, this award. And, just feeling that there was a problem with that. And it was a moment where, Maddie Rich and Ernest were starting to direct, and John Singleton actually was one of the other nominees there with Boys in the Hood, and Jodie directing her first film as a woman, and just really feeling that, honestly, this boredom with white films made by white people. I've been going to the movies my whole life, and that also factored into a certain point, just really hunger for something different. So I think that's kind of the other thing that and it's true, because this is such a major kind of, Bobby was such a Black Lives Matter person, obviously, and it was interesting for me also to see the this kind of fraternity between Bobby's church and some of the other churches and the Muslim community up there, visualizing, what's possible, especially this exact day. I'd love to, chain Donald Trump to a chair and make him watch that scene endlessly, just endlessly on a loop. And then punch him sometimes. I'm sorry, I'm not violent, but then...
Something else we talked about on Pure Nonfiction is the recurrence of faith as a theme in your documentaries. Certainly, it comes up in your documentary about Jimmy Carter. It comes up in I'm Carolyn Parker, your film set in New Orleans, certainly here. And I wanted to ask you about your own religious upbringing. Clearly, Bobby's side of the family, had religion. Did you have religion? Did your parents have religion growing up?
Well, I was taken to church, an Episcopalian church, every Sunday, growing up, and I went to Sunday school and did all that. I'm.
Did you ever feel the calling yourself as a young man?
No, I sort of was. Got the dogma, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I just didn't buy it. I just didn't buy that at all. The only time I've really kind of felt religion in a really intense way in my life was in Bahia, Brazil. I was down there years ago, and a couple of times, and got very emotionally involved with the candomblé, which is the old African religion as practiced in Brazil under the name candomblé, and very matriarchal religion, and just very loving and embracing, and just very powerful. So but even there, I think I'm definitely what they call, I guess, an atheist. I don't believe in God, but I do believe in people who believe in God. I'm very moved by churches and people coming together in a positive way and singing songs of their faith and stuff. that's I guess that's my religion, is people who have a positive practice of positive religion.
Um, there's a moment near the end where Bobby says, "I don't want to romanticize the Black Panthers" or something to that effect, and I wonder if he ever went any further to describe like the lines that he drew around the positive things he thought that kind of radical movement stood for, and what he might think is negative about it.
You know, he told me that he wasn't concerned with social issues. He was raised in church and believed in God and felt a calling, but he wasn't concerned with social issues. His first assignment at a divinity school, I think they call it, was at a parish somewhere in Brooklyn, and it was a very poor parish in a very, very poor part of town, and he was awakened to the injustice of it all from his kind of religious point of view, philosophical point of view, whatever it was. He was really awakened, and at this point he became very committed to using religion and his belief to help bring, justice, as he loved to say so much.
I don't know if we've said, to put in perspective, Robert Castle passed away sometime after the making of this film. I'm not sure how many years it was after the making of this film.
About 3 or 4 years ago, yeah.
What did the film mean for him when it was completed and out in the world?
Bobby liked the film very much, and I mean, he could sit there and look. There's all his views coming forth, and we went to the Cannes Festival together. And it was funny because Joanne and I arrived on a plane before Bob and Kate, and Bob, when they arrived, he at Cannes, Bob's like, "Where do the poor people live? I'm not comfortable here. That hotel's too big. I don't want to be there." And I was like, "Bob, please, for this 1 minute, give me a break and just kind of surrender to whatever this is. Let's enjoy the festival." The thing that struck me after, because fiction films was, my first and foremost love. That's what made me obsessed with films at a very young age, first on television, then in movie theaters. So fiction, movies. And then I started seeing, as I became more deeply immersed in film buffery, and started seeing some of the documentaries that were coming out of the new wave in France, and thinking, gosh, documentaries are cinema too. And I started I think a lot of people, I was one of them, have a fear of documentaries at a certain point. Like, oh my God, that's the last thing I need is go learn something. I'd much rather escape. So I started paying a little more attention, and then when I had the opportunity to, or was motivated to make one myself, and then made a couple more, I started thinking, this is hilarious, because I do love making fiction films, and I'm loving now discovering the joy of documentary filmmaking. And I thought, isn't this interesting? When we make a fiction film, all our energy goes into trying to make it seem as real as possible, so to really engage the audience. And with documentaries, I'm always trying to make them as entertaining as possible. Soundtracks and stuff. A lot of people use soundtracks, but just sort of trying to have creative editing and make it feel like a movie. So that's kind of like the schizophrenia that I've lived with over the years. And I'm still, I think, in terms of filmmaking, that I'm more in love now with documentaries than making documentaries than anything else. The only what I've noticed about my documentary work is it's always the subject matter is always a person or a situation that I find very inspiring, and that's my groove. So that's kind of like, I'm stuck there. I'm happy there. It's exciting for me. You never know, because with as Steve Apcon knows, you never know who's going to see your documentaries. And as you know, it's just, you have to make them. And there's this little, for me, I don't know if it's true of everybody, I think maybe when we get this finished, maybe it will be in libraries all over the country. And some people might someday be interested in this subject and actually watch it, and it can be a resource for people. So that's kind of my group. And the hybrid documentaries and stuff. I don't know. I have nothing against them. I'm not. I wouldn't be interested in doing that. Yeah. The main body of the film. I haven't seen the film for a while. I was kind of startled by that. And for a second, I was like, uh-oh, did the credits not make it? This looks like a credit sequence. And I think that it was intended to be. The idea was to finish the film with footage illustrating, the consequences of the kind of indifference that Bobby was always talking about. I went to my buddy, KRS-One, Chris Parker, and asked Chris if I could have that song, that this was a film in need of as much edutainment, which he dubbed this kind of piece, as possible. And he said, yes. So he gave me the song. And as we started looking at the footage and cutting it to the length of the entire song, we thought we'll cut it down. But I just found myself thinking, no, this is an extraordinary moment. Let's hear what Chris Parker has to say about the state of affairs against a visual backdrop of what happens in this country when you, for too long a time, ignore injustice. Yeah, thank you, because he retired. He left St. Mary's eventually in good graces, and retired to Vermont, went back to what they call the Northern Kingdom up there, and lived on his farm, and once again did what he talked about earlier. He would go, if one of the small churches in the area needed a pastor, he would go do that, what they call supply. And he kind of remained, engaged with what was going on, but he was, his knees were going out on him and what have you. So he kind of stuck up there. He was very, very close with his family, very, very close with his kids and his grandkids. It was a big deal for him, that family thing. And my son Brooklyn, who got very interested in activism and through a lens of abolition of slavery and then abolition of prisons, what have you, wound up getting very close to Bobby in his last year or two, just as a one-on-one thing that I wasn't really part of, and it was just so delightful to me that to see that thing happening. And Bobby, I told Thom earlier, Brooklyn came home from one of his visits to Vermont with a copy of Bob's 1928 edition of the John Brown story, and this was like, the Holy Grail, and it's like a very special place in Brooklyn's room to this day.
I take it you're at work with your team to eventually restore Cousin Bobby, and
yeah, we found a show print was in like my archives for some I didn't even know we had it, and it was looked at, and it's in beautiful shape. It's all in sync, and we're gonna see if somebody would like to have the distribution rights to it. The copyright has come back to me, and we've got a nice print. So,
well, I thank all of you for taking this journey with us to
thank
see
you
this
so
film
much,
again.
everybody.
Thanks especially Jonathan Demme.